Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to my channel for another Hot Toys 1/6 scale diecast MCU figure unboxing and review. Today we're taking a look at the Iron Man Mark III, based off its appearance in Iron Man 1. Hot Toys are no strangers at this point to making a good Mark III. This, not counting the quarter scale, stealth and construction versions, marks their 4th attempt. But is this their best one yet? That's what we're here to find out. I got mine at a discount from Pop Collectibles. As always, do your own research, make sure you are comfortable before buying. I have popped the link to their site in the description below, along with the discount code Justin's Collection, for 5% off your order if you do decide to buy from them. While you're down there, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button, so you're notified as soon as a brand new Hot Toys review goes live on the channel. As for the box art, not only is the artwork good, but so too is the finish. The entire surface is done in this rough texture, and it's metallic. When the light bounces off the suit on the front, it looks awesome. We do have an image of the Mark III front and center, and yes, this is the actual figure, sporting his battle-damaged chest plate with his rocket pods sticking out. We do have a Hot Toys Special Edition sticker up top, and his name down below. They have specifically mentioned this is a 2.0, that's because they're not counting the plastic versions. Technically, yes, this is the second version of the die-cast Mark III. Then on the side of the box, we have the rest of that image from the front spilling over the edge, showcasing his gauntlet shield, his name in the middle, as well as this TV scanline effect with a couple of images of the Mark III from Iron Man 1 in the background. Back here we have more of that TV scanline effect, more of that rough textured finish on the surface. Couple of shots of the Mark III, including the construction version, which was reissued relatively recently. His name, and warnings and legal information. On this side we have this gold insert that says Stark Industries, and I kinda wish the circle would have matched up with the circle sculpted into the surface of the foam block. But it doesn't quite get there, unfortunately. I'm pretty sure nobody else cares about that, it's just me being a little bit pedantic. On the lid, it says Mark III 2.0. For those of you who don't know, my first ever Hot Toys figure was an Iron Man Mark III. But it wasn't the die-cast version, it was the battle-damaged plastic one. And oh boy, they have come a very long way since then. This guy is extremely heavy, and just look at that gorgeous satin finish. What we are going to do now, though, is get all of his accessories laid out in the light box and take a closer look at everything he comes with. Starting off with the display base first, which I'm in sort of a love-hate relationship with. I love the way it looks. As a display piece, it's awesome. You have Ironmonger bursting out of the ground. What's not to like, right? Well, practicality-wise, I hate it. It just doesn't work for me. We have this tiny little section of ground around the front to actually use as a display base, which, you know, this thing is meant to be. Unfortunately, also, the flight pole is at an angle offset to one side, and the crotch grabber waist clamp combo does stick out past the edge of the display base. So if you do have it facing forward in line with the nameplate, he is going to be standing right around here on, what, his imagination, I guess? So to use it, you have to angle it, and then he's not standing square with the nameplate, which just doesn't work for me. I personally am going to opt to remove this flight pole waist clamp crotch grabber combo, even though it is nice and secure because they have combined both of those attachment methods to have him cupped down the bottom and clamped at the waist. Just takes away from the realism for me, and I don't want to be forced to display Iron Man at an angle. Everything else I like, the nameplate being the movie logo, nice touch. The ground being very textured with the sculpt work and the line work, and then washes in the detail brown, black, and some speckling of grey on the surface. That's all brilliant. Then Ironmonger himself, being as metallic and shiny as he is, literally emerging from the ground with his eyes painted looking like they're glowing. As a display piece, like I've already said, this thing is awesome. And if you just wanted to have this as Ironmonger in the display because you never got the original plastic version and Hot Toys just don't really seem interested in making a die-cast one, this could totally work for that. There is enough of Ironmonger for him to make an impact in the display. The only other complaint I have is that I wish there was a USB-C port to plug him in and have his eyes lit up all the time. They could have even added a blinking red light for some sort of targeting system on his Gatling gun. This little bullet belt is also made of rubbery plastic, by the way, so just be careful not to catch this when you do have Iron Man posed fighting Ironmonger or just on the display base in general. Oh, Hot Toys, devaluing your plastic releases one exclusive accessory at a time. But I'm not mad at that because I missed out on this special edition accessory from back in the day with whatever the hell plastic Iron Man figure this came with. So now I can finally have my Ironmonger displayed crushing the Mark III helmet. It's crumpled looking, there are cracks and crevices everywhere, and it is completely deformed. It no longer looks like that classic Iron Man Mark III helmet. There are also some rubbery plastic pieces down below. There is this massive ball joint plug at the bottom. I don't exactly know if you can have an Iron Man figure wearing this, but you could definitely try if that's something you wanted to do. It would look very, very goofy though. I'm tempted to give that a go just for the lols. Now, this Tony Stark head sculpt on paper is new because of this fringe piece and the blood coming down the side with these individual tiny little strands of hair painted up top. But it's not new. It's repurposed from the Mech Test Tony, the 2.0 version. They have made some modifications. Number 1, that fringe. Number 2, the paint applications. And number 3, it's now a split cut neck for maximum range of motion. We will discuss this head sculpt in a lot more detail when we actually pop it on the body. We also have this rubbery neck gasket piece that you do have to use with this head sculpt, just to make the blend between the neck and the suit a little bit more realistic. I remember back in the day with the original plastic versions, these swap out shield pieces weren't swap out pieces at all, these were integrated into the armor. To their detriment, unfortunately, because there were panel lines everywhere, they were loose, these things just came out when you didn't want them to, whereas now they're swap out pieces, they're simple, and they're way more accurate. We've got the metallic red armor bits, we also have all of this greebly detail work, even some detail work on the underside, which you'd never normally see anyway. We do have 2 of these, one for either side, and we will try these out on him later on. We do have some more swap out pieces, his dart launchers, they are articulated and they swap out on magnets via this panel, as well as the tank busting missile. The moment in the film where Tony shoots the tank, then turns and walks away before it even blows up, that was badass. Hence why I'm considering actually displaying my Mark III with this tank missile. It is painted in this bright silver, and we do have washers in all of the sculpted detail, so it pops against that silver. Next up, we get some battle damaged pieces. The faceplate with the scuffs across the metallic gold surface, and there's some detail on the inside with translucent lenses so the light can pass through for the LED light up. 2 swap out battle damaged shoulder pads with some scorch marks on the surface, and that's all sculpted battle damage, not just painted. Plus a battle damaged chest plate. We do have multiple cracks, dents, and a completely smashed window for the arc reactor. There isn't any detail on the inside, unfortunately. Back in the day, they used to do that, but it seems they're getting away from doing that. There's a lot of detail on the surface, just nothing on the underside. Not that it's a massive deal. I don't think anyone's going to be displaying him without the chest plate on, flipped around on the display base. You might want to, I would suggest probably don't do that. Now you do get some articulated finger hands, multiple joints at each knuckle, and then a hinge at the bottom. For the thumb, it's a ball joint. Plus the repulsor section is done in this smoked translucent plastic. Whereas for the repulsor blasting hands, the wrist peg port is at an angle and there is a clear line of sight to the properly translucent repulsor section. These ones are supposed to look better lit up. We also have some washers in the gaskets between each of the fingers. And there's some battle damage on the outside of the palms. What we are going to do now, though, is get the Mark III itself out here. Standing straight up and down in the light box, no crazy poses or accessories or anything like that. Did you know that this guy was going to be this good? Because I definitely didn't. The original is solid and is one of my favourite diecast figures. Not anymore, because this one is significantly better. The proportions alone sell it. It looks like RDJ in the suit, shrunk down to 1/6 scale, just rotating around in front of us. There aren't gaps everywhere. He also has this satin finish over him. Thank you, Hot Toys, for finally committing to the satin finish. He has a plethora of swap out weapons and battle damage pieces, and a Tony Stark head sculpt. Not to mention that incredible looking, not necessarily functioning, diorama Ironmonger display base. As a package, do I recommend this guy even though we're early on in the video compared to that original version? Oh hell yes I do. Up close and personal, kicking things off with the Mark III's helmet. I never had a massive issue with the original Diecast Mark III's helmet until I compared it to this new one. The original was significantly smaller in every dimension, and the mouth slit was way larger for some reason, and all of that did throw off the proportions. They have still retained all of the black panel line detail and the metallic sheen of the faceplate, but they've dialed down the saturation on almost everything. And they've made the red this gorgeous satin finish versus this really high gloss. Then over the top of all of that stunning paintwork, they have added this speckling of dirt and grime in certain areas. Not enough for me to want to call it battle damage. I would just say it's some light wear and tear. Surface detail is the best way I can describe what's going on here. I was a massive fan of this Tony Stark head sculpt when we got it originally with the Mech Test Tony 2.0. This time, they have changed a couple of things. Number one, the fringe is now a new piece. It swoops down to the side rather than sticking out over his forehead. They've added some battle damage, and they've painted the eyes off to the side, whereas the original one was just looking front on. But that just means if you wanted to use this Mech Test Tony head sculpt with the suit and pop this new one on the Mech Test body, they are on the exact same neck connector, so technically they should be compatible. They've painted it so he looks a little bit sweaty too, which is perfect for the end scene from Iron Man 1. They've added some little individual strands of hair up top, and that's my favorite detail by far on this head sculpt. Having those teeny tiny little strands just adds a touch of realism. At a distance, you don't really see them, but up close you absolutely do. And the blood trickling down from his forehead is nice and wet and glossy looking. Now this is the Mech Test Tony sculpt on the body, and it works here. It's the same neck connector. It's just that I don't love the split cut underneath the jawline. I think for this particular version of this head sculpt, they should have redone the neck so it was one seamless piece. Yes, this will theoretically allow for greater range of motion, as long as you don't tilt the head sculpt down too much and scuff up the paint on that neck. Just to prove it to you, yes, this head sculpt is compatible with the Mech Test body. Now, I'm considering displaying this particular version of the sculpt on this body because the eyes looking off to the side are slightly more dynamic and I prefer this fringe. The only thing that's throwing it off is the battle damage. Unless, of course, in your headcanon, this is Tony after he crashed into the wall while he was doing all of his mech tests. When you're reinstalling the helmet, don't forget to remove this rubbery neck gasket piece. And vice versa when you're installing the Tony Stark head sculpt, don't forget to put it in. And do make sure that this little peg is sitting inside the slot that has been specifically designed for it so it sits nice and flush. Something that I am so glad they did away with from the original Diecast Mark III is how the power system works. Back here there was a very visible screw, and underneath this flap there was a little switch that was just in your face and looked nasty. The original prototype for the Diecast Mark III 2.0 had all of that, and thankfully they've changed it for the final version. Now, this middle piece is a removable panel, a much better choice. And the power button is just that, an actual button versus a switch. You can still see the lettering over the top that says on and off, but it's nowhere near as egregious as just a black switch on a silver platform. Now it blends in with the detail underneath this panel. You can also open up these flaps, including this outer one, and you can extend down the metal mesh pieces, which are made of real metal. There is some additional detail tucked up under there as well. Just when you're installing these, do be careful not to put too much pressure on these metal pieces, because out of the box, these flaps are not attached. You do have to plug them in, and they will clip in with a very satisfying click. There is some more hidden detail, and to get to it, you do have to crunch him forward, but look at all that circuitry up under there. And there's a silver dry brush just over the high spots, picking up all of that sculpt work. I guess hidden detail is going to be the theme of this review because there are various panels here that serve no other purpose other than to hide detail. So when you take them off, there's all this extra sculpted stuff underneath. The chest plate is one of those pieces. You take it off and look at all of the servos and pistons and little bits and pieces fully painted in silver. Also, the arc reactor does have a lot of detail in it, but with the LEDs turned on, it does tend to drown out some of that sculpt work. You can also extend out these pieces, you can flare them out for some reason. The instructions do call these flaps, so maybe they're to stabilize Iron Man mid-flight. I also like these silver brackets up on top, looking very industrial with the rivets sculpted in. And these pops of silver, these pieces in the film, when the chest plate goes on and the screws are tightened up, they move up and lock in position. They have also done away almost with the gaps at the shoulders. You can futz around with it and move the shoulder pads, which are articulated, and these inner pieces are made of die casts, but it still has a little bit of gappiness depending on how you angle everything. They've tried their best, and I think they've gotten as close as possible to making these shoulder areas as seamless as they can. The biceps are removable to hide the battery compartment and the light switch. I do wish that looked a little bit better than it does, but it is hidden underneath a panel. Like I said, hidden detail is the theme. You do have more scratching and pitting on the surface, plus some airbrushed darker gold shading on the metallic gold pieces, just to make it look slightly more worn and torn. Like I said, not quite battle damage, just some light wear and tear, some surface detail. The ab section is no longer a swap out piece. With the original Diecast Mark III, believe it or not, you had to take off the upper torso, take off the hip area, including the legs, switch out this entire section, and then you had a pre-posed torso that you could use to do the ground pound pose. This time, you can just crunch him forward. There's no extensions, there's no bullshit, there's some hidden detail under there, and you just crunch him. It's way easier this way. It's just now dawning on me that we do have to try out all of the battle damage pieces and the switch out weaponry, so we better pick up the pace, otherwise we're going to be here all day. You can extend out the flare canisters, fully painted on the inside of course. Then the thighs are nice and chonky, very shiny and gold, with all of that surface scratching and pitting. Same thing with the silver flicks of paint to make it look like the red has been scratched away. And back here, this might just be one of my favorite details on the entire figure. You can open up the back of the legs, top and bottom, and expose all of the bright silver pistons, with some properly painted wires in there and some LEDs. They have gone to town with the detailing. Even with the panels closed, you can see some pops of silver underneath this sculpted vent work. Now, I am curious to see what he looks like with all of the battle damage pieces on. The number one question I have is, will it be a cohesive look, or will it look like a completely clean suit, just with a couple of bits of pieces of battle damage thrown on there? Cohesive enough is the answer to that. While it's not perfect, there are a couple of panels, like right here in the ab section, that are very clean. Everything else has enough of that surface detail, the silver scratching and the airbrush shading, that it does help the battle damage pieces blend in. I will be displaying my figure battle damaged. Even though it's just the chest plate, the shoulder pads, and the face plate, it does enough to make him look like an absolute badass. This guy's been taking hits and he just keeps on going. Could be that maybe I'm a little bit nostalgic for my first ever Hot Toys figure, which was the plastic Battle Damage Mark III, and yes, I would have preferred a proper fit-for-purpose, head-to-toe, fully battle-damaged figure. This, though, it does work for me, especially the scratches on the faceplate and the cracked window for the arc reactor. Whoever assembled my dart launchers, it must have been like 5 PM on a Friday and they'd had a few, because they assembled them backwards. And no, you can't rotate them or flip the panels. This is how they're supposed to be installed. For reference, this is the Diecast 1.0 Mark III Stealth version. As you can see, the gold darts are around the front, which just makes sense. whereas with this one, they're around the back. I do like the detail and the silver dry brushing and the articulation, I only wish they were assembled correctly. The shield is pretty straightforward to pop on, just make sure you are wedging it underneath the wrist armor and then it can push down and snap in position. And all of this detail is ace. I particularly like the gunmetal and silver, it helps pop against the metallic red and the black on the inside of the shield. You do get two of these, like we discussed in the accessory segment, so if you want to put one on either side, have him dual-wielding shields perhaps, doable. Or if you want to have him dual-wielding rockets, also a possibility. The rocket looks like it's sprung out of the gauntlet as these doors have flipped open, but it's not done that at all, it's literally just a swap-out piece you plug down and in position. I do like the bright shiny silver with the washers in the crevices, it makes it look very mechanical. For a quick side-by-side comparison, what a glow up. Seriously, the new Mark III is better at every level. This is like that whole you versus the guy she told you not to worry about thing. The original one is just shorter, for some reason the proportions are worse, and the colour is inaccurate, not to mention glossy where it really shouldn't be. The new one has that satin finish, which is exactly what I was after. It's got more surface detail. The proportions look way better as though they've elongated him so his legs now fit with the rest of his body. And the gaps have been tightened up at the shoulders and at the waist. I think it's really no competition. The new one takes the win over the original. Surely I can't be the only one that low-key wants them to take this stealth color scheme and copy and paste it onto this new and improved version of the Mark III diecast. And also do a Mark II 2.0 diecast in the future. Something about this lighter teal blue and the metallic electric blue, it just works for me, and this color scheme has always been one of my favorites. Specifically because of the contrast between the red arc reactor and eyes against that blue. Damn it, Hot Toys, I thought we were done revisiting the original Iron Man suits in diecast. Now that I'm seeing the Mark II standing next to the new Mark III, no, we're not done. We still need one more. We need them to go back and redo the Mark II with this all-new Mark III mold. Pop some rivets in the surface and paint the darn thing silver, and then finally we can call it a day. Hopefully. I still find it pretty weird that Tony gets significantly taller in the suit versus like this mech test version where he's already wearing the armored boots anyway. Surely the suit doesn't add that much height to Tony. Nevertheless, compared to the mech test Tony, as you can see, the Mark III gives him an enormous size boost. And his proportions look weirdly different. Which is odd because in Iron Man 1, they used a lot of practical suits versus the later films where they did start to cheat with the proportions because they were using CGI suits. While we do need a proper die-cast Ironmonger, I am not mad at this at all. I still adore the plastic version, and he, as you can see, towers over the Mark III. If you have Ironmonger, yeah, I think these two are more than displayable side by side. And finally, I have that stupid little crushed Mark III helmet that I've wanted for ages, and now I can have him crushing it in his hand in the collection. Going over articulation, I'm expecting big things from this guy. Starting off with his helmet, up underneath there's a ball joint and a hinge, then the neck is on a ball joint at the base of it. Looking forward to there, a combined range up to there, decent enough for a flight pose, swivel, and pivot side to side. Before you move the arms, just extend out the joint at the shoulder and bring the shoulder pad out, just so you get your maximum range of motion and you avoid paint rub. The arms will go up to there, going forward and back, butterfly joint at the shoulder that also hinges up and down. Swivel at the bicep, double bend at the elbow getting you to 90, and then the wrist peg is just a massive ball joint. Unlike previous diecast Iron Man figures, this time you don't need to extend the joints at the waist to get your max range. This time you just crunch it forward, going to there, going back to there, swivel and pivot side to side. All of that motion is handled by the joint at the upper torso. It's a ball joint. The legs, though, are on traditional diecast Iron Man drop-down joints. They're also ratcheted and they're pretty darn sturdy. Now you can see this side is sitting lower than this one. I would like to see them start experimenting with a drop-down underneath this thigh piece of armor, just like what 3.0 are doing with their diecast Iron Man figures. Also, don't forget to move the hip skirts out the way. They're on multiple hinges. Going out to there, going forward to there, and as you can see, the legs do hinge forward at an angle. But you can rotate the legs at the upper thigh to try and get them sitting more square, so they're facing forward rather than out. You then have a ratcheted double bend at the knee going past 90, and then just a whole bunch of joints at the ankles, including this piece which moves forward, so you shouldn't have any paint rub on the foot. Going forward to there, going back to there, you do have ankle tilt, just be careful of these panels sticking out over the sides of the foot. And lastly, toe articulation. Moving on to the 3 cool and 3 annoying things. The first annoying thing is instead of going with magnets for the chest plate and some of the other swap out pieces like the shoulder pads, they went with these very thin, brittle feeling plastic posts, and I am so freaking worried that over time, switching out all of the armor plates and panels, those little posts just aren't going to hold up, and eventually they're going to snap off. The second annoying thing is instead of going with USB-C power or having some kind of copper coil in the display base that transfers power through Iron Man so he turns on just with one push of a button, they decided to use button cell batteries again. So to have this guy fully illuminated, you have to remove multiple panels, flick multiple switches, then you can stand back and admire him illuminated for a short period of time until those button cell batteries very quickly die on you. The third annoying thing is the display base, surprisingly. I love the way it looks, just not the way it works. When you bring in Iron Man, there is a teeny amount of space to actually have him posed on the darn thing. And if you have him just standing there, his feet are sticking over the edge of the display base. For me, I would have liked to have seen this part of the base, the actual platform that functions as a base, be slightly longer, coming out and squaring off. That way you would have had a little bit more room to actually stand the Mark III on the darn thing. The first cool thing is all of the extra detail hidden under the various little panels. Being able to open up stuff and see the inner workings, especially back here where this is illuminated too. This is a blast from the past. Hot Toys just stopped doing this kind of stuff with modern day Iron Man suits. The second cool thing is battle damage. Now, back in the day, the rest of the suit used to be completely clean, devoid of detail, devoid of scratches, and then when you put the battle damage pieces on, it didn't look like a cohesive thing. It looked like a clean dude with a couple of damage pieces. This guy almost looks like that, but because there is enough surface detail on all of the other panels to convincingly help the battle damage pieces blend in, I think he gets away with it. The third cool thing is they've captured pretty much all of the scene-specific weapons from Iron Man 1. You have the dart launchers, you have the missile that he uses to take out the tank, you have the shield that he uses at multiple points in the movie, and you even have the pop-out flare canisters on his hips. Wrapping up on the new Diecast Mark III from Iron Man 1. I'm not going to beat around the bush here because I've already said it. This guy is absolutely incredible. The proportions, the fact that he's not all kinds of gappy, you can collapse everything down to make it look completely seamless, with the crazy levels of engineering, the swap out weaponry, the battle damage pieces, the hidden detail under various panels that even lights up, specifically around the back for the legs, and an unhelmeted Tony Stark head sculpt that's technically kinda sorta new if you don't count the mech test base sculpt, and the awesome looking but not so practical Ironmonger diorama display base, you get all of that with this figure. And it doesn't just trump the original, it destroys it. That Diecast Mark III 1.0, I love it. I do. I still have a place for it in my collection, somewhere in the back perhaps. This one's going right at the front. The Mark III is iconic. There's no question. And I'm glad Hot Toys decided to make a 2.0 version of a figure that we've already had multiple versions of. I wasn't so sure at the start. Now that I have it in hand and I've spent some time with it, posing it, feeling that crazy engineering and seeing that satin finish in person, oh, this guy is the one to get. If you're considering picking up a Mark III, especially now that this one is out, people will be dumping their original one probably for cheap. Don't do it. Resist the temptation. Save up the money. Get this new version. It is vastly superior. Now, I got mine at a discount from Pop Collectibles. As always, do your own research. Make sure you're comfortable before buying. I have popped the link to their site in the description below, along with the discount code Justin's Collection, for 5% off your order if you do decide to buy from them. While you're down there, why not hit that subscribe, bell notification icon, and join button if you like the sound of seeing your name in the end credits of my reviews. Like, comment, and subscribe will catch you in the next video.